I'm Jessica Morgan, 27, and I was sweating bullets as I parked outside my parents' suburban home. Despite running my own successful business, I still felt like that insecure teenager whenever I visited. Mom's criticism about my risky career choice never stopped, even as I secretly paid their mortgage for the past 2 years. Tonight's dinner would be different though. I noticed the new roof I'd anonymously funded as I approached the door, heart pounding. Before I share what happened at that fateful dinner table, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about standing your ground in toxic family situations. Growing up in Mapleton, a middle-class suburb with neat lawns and 2-car garages, I was raised to believe that success had a very specific definition. My parents, Diane and Thomas Morgan, weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable and respectable, 2 qualities my mother valued above almost everything else. Mom worked as a high school English teacher and built her identity around being the perfect suburban wife and mother. She was involved in every PTA meeting, church fundraiser, and neighborhood committee. Our house was always immaculate, ready for unexpected visitors, and so was our family image. Appearances matter more than you think, Jessica, she'd remind me, straightening my collar or fixing my hair before school. People make judgments in seconds. Dad worked at the same accounting firm for 30 years. He was quieter, more reserved, letting Mom handle most of the child-rearing decisions. He wasn't cold, just distant, retreating to his newspaper or television after dinner while Mom managed our lives with precision. In elementary school, I thrived academically. My straight A's and academic awards made me the daughter Mom bragged about at her book club meetings. I still remember her proud smile when I won the 5th grade spelling bee, defeating students 2 grades above me. That night, she made my favorite dessert and called both grandmothers to share the news. Jessica is gifted, she'd tell anyone who would listen. She's going to be somebody important someday. The problems started in my junior year of high school when I discovered digital marketing through a school project. The way businesses could build their presence online fascinated me. While my peers were applying to pre-med and pre-law programs at prestigious universities, I announced my intention to major in marketing. Mom's face fell instantly. Marketing? You mean advertising? With your brain and test scores, you could be a doctor or lawyer, Jessica. Why would you waste your potential? From that moment, a pattern emerged. Every achievement in my chosen field was met with the same response: "That's nice, dear, but imagine what you could accomplish if you'd chosen a real profession." My younger brother Kyle, for years my junior, became the family golden child when he declared his intention to become a doctor. His bedroom walls became shrines to his accomplishments, while mine remained bare despite my own successes. The 2008 recession hit our family harder than I initially realized. Dad's firm downsized, cutting his hours and bonus. Mom started taking on extra tutoring sessions after school. They never discussed financial struggles openly, maintaining the appearance of stability. After college, I moved to Portland, determined to build my career away from Mom's constant disapproval. Starting my own digital marketing consultancy was terrifying but freeing. Every client I landed felt like validation of my choice, even as Mom's voice echoed in my head during late nights when I questioned everything. 3 years ago, Kyle called me late one night, his voice tight with worry. "Jess, I don't know who else to tell. Dad lost his job 6 months ago. The firm completely restructured. He's been pretending to go to work every day so Mom won't know." "What? How is that possible?" I asked, stunned. "You know how Mom is about appearances. Dad's afraid of disappointing her. They're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a foreclosure notice." I felt sick imagining my father, a proud but quiet man, sitting in coffee shops all day rather than admitting he'd been let go. Mom's obsession with keeping up appearances had created a household where even her husband couldn't be honest about losing his job. That night, I transferred $12,000 to Kyle's account with instructions to help Dad pay the mortgage arrears anonymously. It was nearly all my savings at the time, but I couldn't bear the thought of my parents losing their home. "Tell Dad it's from a life insurance policy Grandpa had that just paid out," I instructed Kyle. Mom can never know it came from me. Over the next 2 years, as my business grew, so did my parents' financial needs. Dad found another job eventually, but at significantly lower pay. Mom remained oblivious, or in denial, continuing to maintain their lifestyle as if nothing had changed. I paid for a new roof when Kyle mentioned leaks, $15,400. I covered property taxes when they fell behind, $8,600. Dad's heart medication that wasn't fully covered by insurance, $7,200. The furnace that died in the middle of winter, $6,800. Mom's dental work she'd been postponing, $4,300. Various home repairs that couldn't be ignored, $8,700. All told, $61,000 of my hard-earned money keeping my parents afloat while Mom continued to belittle my career choices at every family gathering. My best friend Amber couldn't understand why I kept helping. "They're my parents," I explained, unable to articulate the complex mix of duty, love, and desire for approval that drove me. "What am I supposed to do? Let them lose everything?" "You could tell them the truth," Amber suggested. "Make your mom see how successful you actually are." But I wasn't ready for that confrontation. Part of me feared that even proof of my success wouldn't change Mom's opinion. And an even deeper part feared that revealing my financial assistance would hurt Dad's pride beyond repair. So I maintained the charade, building my business by day and secretly supporting my parents by night, all while enduring Mom's continued disappointment in my life choices. My journey to entrepreneurial success wasn't a straight line. After graduating with my marketing degree, I spent 2 years working at a traditional marketing agency, learning the ropes while watching the digital landscape transform before my eyes. The agency was slow to adapt to social media and content marketing, still focused on print campaigns and television spots while clients increasingly asked about online strategies. When I pitched modernizing our approach, my ideas were dismissed as trendy and unproven. I still remember my supervisor patting my shoulder condescendingly. "Those tactics might work for startups, Jessica, but our clients need real marketing solutions." I quit 2 weeks later, terrified but determined. My tiny studio apartment became my office, living room, and occasional bedroom when projects kept me working until dawn. My first client was a local bakery struggling to compete with a national chain that had opened nearby. Their $500 budget was barely enough to cover my expenses, but I treated their account like it was worth millions. Within 3 months, my targeted Instagram campaign and redesigned website had increased their foot traffic by 40%. The owner cried when she tallied the month's receipts. "You saved my business," she told me, hugging me tightly. I was ready to close the doors. Word spread. One client became 3, then 7, then 12. I hired my first employee at the 6-month mark, a college student who handled basic content creation while I focused on strategy. By the end of my first year in business, I had 4 part-time employees and a small but functional office space. The morning I landed my first 6-figure client, a regional restaurant chain with 30 locations, I sat in my car and sobbed. All the doubt, all the fear, all the nights questioning my decisions seemed worth it in that moment. I wanted to call Mom first, to finally hear pride in her voice. Instead, I called Amber, who screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. That same evening, Kyle called with news that made my victory taste bitter. Dad's medical bills came in. His heart medication isn't fully covered by the new insurance. They're looking at almost $7,200 for the year out of pocket. Mom's talking about going back to teaching full-time, but she hasn't been in a classroom for years. I thought about my parents, in their early 60s, struggling to make ends meet while maintaining the facade of comfortable retirement. Dad's health issues were worsening from the stress, creating a vicious cycle of medical expenses they couldn't afford. "Kyle, I just signed a major client. I can help with the medication," I said, the words tumbling out before I could reconsider. "Jess, no. You've already done too much. That roof wasn't cheap, and I know business is still unpredictable for you." "I'm doing better than you think," I insisted. Set up the payment plan for Dad's medication. I'll transfer the money monthly so it's less noticeable. This became our pattern. Kyle would reluctantly mention a financial crisis, I would insist on helping, and we would devise a way to provide the money without alerting our parents to its true source. Kyle created elaborate stories about insurance reimbursements, tax refunds, and work bonuses to explain the mysterious financial reprieves. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. I expanded to a team of 12 full-time employees with a downtown office space. Industry publications featured my case studies. I was invited to speak at marketing conferences. My income exceeded what either of my parents had ever earned, even in their peak earning years combined. Yet every Sunday dinner at their house included at least one comment from Mom about when you're going to get a real job with benefits or it's not too late to go to law school. Each barb stung, not because I doubted my choices, but because I desperately wanted her to see me, really see me, and the success I'd built. I started dating Brian, a software developer who recognized my value immediately. He couldn't understand why I continued to fund my parents secretly while enduring their criticism. You're subsidizing their ability to belittle you, he pointed out one night after I'd returned from a particularly difficult family dinner. What would happen if you just stopped? I couldn't answer him. The truth was, I was afraid. Afraid that without my financial support, my parents would lose their home, their stability, and whatever happiness they'd managed to preserve. But I was also afraid that revealing my assistance would permanently alter our family dynamic in ways I couldn't predict or control. The weight of the secret grew heavier. Every transfer to Kyle's account, every discussion about which bill to prioritize, every family dinner where I bit my tongue, it all took a toll. I began dreading the monthly calls from Kyle, knowing each one represented another financial crisis I would solve while receiving no recognition or gratitude. My resentment built alongside my success. By the 3-year mark of my business, I had managed to provide $61,000 to my parents through various channels. I maintained detailed records of every payment, partly for tax purposes and partly as proof to myself that my frivolous career choice had real, tangible value, even if Mom couldn't see it. When Brian asked me to move in with him, I hesitated, wondering if combining our finances would expose the extent of my family support. He deserved to know where substantial portions of my income were going, but explaining required revealing the complicated truth about my family dynamic. I need to tell you something, I said one night over dinner at his apartment. I've been financially supporting my parents for years. Without their knowledge. I showed him the spreadsheet detailing every payment. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the numbers. Jessica, this is a lot of money. I know. And they have no idea? None. Mom still thinks I'm barely scraping by with my little internet business. Brian set down his phone and took my hands. You need to tell them. Not just for your sake, but for theirs. This isn't sustainable, and it isn't healthy for anyone involved. Deep down, I knew he was right. Something had to change. I just didn't know how to begin dismantling the elaborate structure of secrets and support I'd built over the years. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The call from Mom came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a client presentation when my phone lit up with her name. I sent it to voicemail, focusing on the potential $250,000 contract in front of me instead of whatever criticism she might have waiting. When I checked the message later, Mom's voice had that particular tone I'd come to dread, the forced cheerfulness that barely disguised her disappointment. Jessica, dear, we're having a special family dinner this Sunday at 6. Your brother has some news to share, and we'd love for you to be there. Do try to dress appropriately. Last time your outfit was a bit casual for a family dinner. I called Kyle immediately. What's this about a special dinner? Are you okay? Kyle hesitated. Amanda and I have some news, but... Jess, Mom's on a tear lately about your career. Dad mentioned that your website won some award. Digital marketing excellence, yeah. It's actually a pretty big deal in the industry. Well, Mom's been researching marketing salaries online and has decided you're wasting your potential. She's planning a whole intervention about how you need to go back to school before it's too late. I tried to talk her out of it, but you know how she gets. My stomach nodded. At 30 years old, I was still bracing myself for maternal criticism like a teenager. The irony that Mom was researching marketing salaries while I paid her property taxes wasn't lost on me. Maybe I should skip it, I suggested, already knowing I wouldn't. Please come, Kyle pleaded. Amanda and I need you there. Our news is important. I spent the rest of the week oscillating between dread and determination. Brian suggested I finally tell my parents about my financial support, but the thought made me physically ill. What if Dad was humiliated? What if Mom still found a way to dismiss my success? You can't control their reactions, Brian reminded me. You can only control whether you continue living in this unhealthy pattern. Sunday arrived with gray clouds threatening rain, fitting for my mood. I dressed carefully in a silk blouse and tailored pants that cost more than Mom probably thought I earned in a month. Professional but not flashy. Successful but not trying too hard. I'd learned to navigate these nuanced dress codes through years of Mom's subtle and not-so-subtle critiques. Brian squeezed my hand before I left. Remember who you are. Your worth isn't determined by her approval. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes, each mile increasing my anxiety. I rehearsed responses to potential criticisms, promising myself I wouldn't get defensive or emotional. This time would be different. This time I would stay calm and confident. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the new landscaping around the front yard, another expense I'd covered when Kyle mentioned the homeowners association was threatening to fine them for unmaintained property. The freshly painted trim on the windows had been a Christmas gift last year, disguised as a service Kyle had won in a raffle at work. I sat in my car, gathering courage. Through the front window, I could see Mom arranging flowers on the dining table, flowers I'd indirectly paid for. The absurdity of the situation almost made me laugh. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, impeccably dressed as always, her critical eye sweeping over my appearance immediately. Jessica, there you are. I was beginning to worry you'd be late. She leaned in for our customary cheek kiss. That blouse is nice. A bit sheer perhaps, but the color suits you. And so it began, the backhanded compliments that had been the soundtrack of my life. Dad emerged from his study, his smile genuine but tired. He'd aged dramatically in the past few years, his once dark hair now completely gray, new lines etched around his eyes. The stress of financial struggles and pretending everything was fine had taken its toll. There's my girl, he said, giving me a warm hug. Good to see you, Jessie. For a moment, I was tempted to whisper in his ear that I knew about the job loss, about the financial struggles, that he didn't need to pretend with me. Instead, I hugged him back silently, noticing how much thinner he felt in my arms. The doorbell rang, announcing Kyle and Amanda's arrival. Kyle looked nervous but happy, his arm protectively around Amanda's waist. Amanda, a pediatric nurse with a kind smile and no tolerance for nonsense, had always been an ally in navigating family gatherings. Jessica. Amanda embraced me warmly. Love the outfit. Very boss lady. Speaking of jobs, Mom interjected, guiding us toward the living room. Kyle was just promoted to attending physician last month. Youngest in his department's history. That's wonderful, Kyle, I said sincerely. Congratulations. Thanks, Jess, Kyle replied, shooting me an apologetic glance for Mom's obvious comparison. We settled into the familiar pre-dinner routine, Dad fixing drinks, Mom directing conversation, Kyle and Amanda on the love seat, me perched on the edge of an armchair like I might need to make a quick escape. So Jessica, Mom began, accepting a glass of wine from Dad, Kyle tells me your website business won some sort of online award? My digital marketing agency won Digital Marketing Excellence in the small business category, yes, I corrected gently. It's a national recognition. How nice. I suppose those internet things are becoming more common these days. She sipped her wine. Does it come with any actual compensation? Or just the recognition? The industry recognition helps attract larger clients, I explained, already feeling my rehearsed calm slipping. We signed 2 major contracts last month because of it. Mom nodded, clearly unimpressed. Well, I suppose it's good to have something to keep you busy until you decide on a real career path. Kyle jumped in. Jess's company is managing marketing for CloudServe now, Mom. They're a Fortune 500 company. I'm sure it's very exciting, Mom replied dismissively. Now, Amanda, tell me more about that charming house you and Kyle are looking at in Brookside. And just like that, I was sidelined from the conversation. I caught Amanda's sympathetic glance as Mom launched into a detailed discussion of real estate values and school districts. Dad remained largely silent, nursing his scotch and occasionally nodding along. The tension built inside me like a pressure cooker. Every dismissive comment, every subject change away from my achievements, every pointed question about job security and retirement planning added another degree of heat. By the time Mom announced dinner was ready, I was nearly at boiling point. As we moved to the dining room, I noticed the new china cabinet against the wall, another expense I'd covered when the old one was damaged by a water leak. Mom was serving dinner on the Royal Doulton plate she treasured, reserved for only the most special occasions. Whatever Kyle and Amanda's news was, Mom clearly considered it celebration-worthy. I took my usual seat at the table, surrounded by physical reminders of my secret financial support, and prepared for what would inevitably be a difficult meal. Mom had outdone herself with dinner, which only heightened my suspicion about the evening's purpose. The table was set with her best linens, candles flickered in silver holders, and the meal was elaborate. Roast beef with Yorkshire pudding, glazed carrots, roasted potatoes, and asparagus with hollandaise sauce. This wasn't a casual Sunday dinner, this was a production. Everything looks wonderful, Mom, Kyle said as we settled into our seats. Well, it's not every day we have the whole family together, she replied, giving me a pointed look that clearly communicated whose fault that was. Dad carved the roast beef in silence, his hand slightly shaky. I wondered if it was his heart medication or just the stress of these family gatherings affecting him. Jessica, Kyle tells me you've been traveling for work, Mom said as Dad served the plates. Somewhere out west? Yes, I was in Seattle meeting with a new client. They're expanding their digital presence and brought us on to manage the transition. Mom delicately cut her meat. Such a shame that your work takes you away so often. I imagine it makes maintaining relationships difficult. There it was, the segue into my personal life, another area Mom found disappointing. At 30, I was unmarried, though Brian and I had been discussing a future together. In Mom's worldview, this represented another failure. Actually, Brian and I are quite serious, I offered, against my better judgment. His work is flexible, so he sometimes travels with me. Brian? The computer person? Mom's eyebrows raised. Well, I suppose that's something. Though I always pictured you with someone more established. Like Kyle and Amanda. Kyle shot me an apologetic glance across the table. Amanda, bless her, attempted to redirect. Jessica's agency is doing amazing work. I saw that campaign you did for the Children's Hospital, Jess. It was really moving. Oh, was that one of your internet advertisements? Mom asked. Kyle mentioned you were doing something with the hospital. I assumed it was volunteer work. It was a full digital marketing campaign, Mom, I corrected, keeping my voice even. We developed their website, social media strategy, and fundraising platform. They raised $3 million for the new pediatric wing. That's very nice, dear. Mom smiled thinly. It's good you're using your computer skills for worthy causes. Though with your test scores, you could have been a doctor working in that hospital instead of just making Facebook posts for them. I set down my fork, counting silently to 10. Dad studied his plate intently, avoiding the conflict as he'd done throughout my childhood. Mom, Jessica's agency is incredibly successful, Kyle interjected. She's not just making social media posts. I'm sure what Jessica does is very current, Mom replied, emphasizing the word like it was a terminal diagnosis. But there's something to be said for traditional career paths with stability and respect. Speaking of which, Kyle and Amanda have some wonderful news to share. Kyle cleared his throat, glancing at Amanda. We were going to wait until dessert, but... Amanda smiled, placing her hand over Kyle's. We're pregnant. Due in November. The table erupted in excitement, genuine on my part, performative on Mom's, though I knew her happiness was real. Dad's face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen all evening. My first grandchild. Mom exclaimed, tears forming. Oh, this is the most wonderful news. Have you thought about names? We should start planning the nursery right away. For the next 20 minutes, pregnancy dominated the conversation. I asked appropriate questions about due dates and how Amanda was feeling, while Mom launched into detailed plans for a baby shower and nursery decorations. As Dad cleared the dinner plates and Mom brought out dessert, her famous caramel apple pie, I thought perhaps I'd escape the career intervention Kyle had warned me about. I should have known better. You know, Jessica, Mom said as she served the pie, this baby news makes me think about legacy and family. Kyle and Amanda are establishing themselves so beautifully. A respected doctor and nurse, a lovely home in a good neighborhood, and now a baby on the way. I tensed, sensing the pivot. It makes me wonder what you're building toward with this online job of yours. Do you have any real security? Any retirement planning? What happens when these internet fads change? My business isn't a fad, Mom, I replied, forcing patience into my voice. Digital marketing is an established industry with consistent growth. But surely you can't plan to make Facebook posts forever, she persisted. At some point, you'll want something more substantial. Something you can be proud of, like your brother's work. I am proud of my work, I said firmly. My agency employs 12 people full-time. We've won national recognition. Our client list includes Fortune 500 companies. Mom smiled in that condescending way that made my blood boil. I'm sure it all sounds very impressive in your online circles, dear. But when people ask what my daughter does for a living, I can barely explain it. When I tell them Kyle is a doctor, everyone immediately understands his value. Kyle interjected, Mom, that's not fair. Jess's work is legitimate and successful. I'm just concerned about her future, Mom continued as if Kyle hadn't spoken. These internet jobs come and go so quickly. No pension, no real security. And it's not too late for a change. Many law schools have programs for career changers. Even medical coding would offer more stability. I pushed my pie away, appetite gone. Mom, I'm 30 years old and run a successful business. I don't need career counseling. Don't take that tone with me, Jessica, Mom snapped. I'm trying to help you. Your father and I worry about you with this hobby business of yours. It's not a hobby, I said through gritted teeth. Well, it certainly doesn't seem to be providing much of a living, she retorted. Your brother was able to buy a house at your age. He and Amanda take nice vacations. They have health insurance and retirement accounts. What do you have to show for all this success you claim? Dad finally spoke, his voice quiet. Diane, perhaps this isn't the time. When is the time, Thomas? Mom interrupted. Jessica is drifting without direction while her biological clock ticks away. At least one of my children will give me something to be proud of now. She gestured toward Amanda's still flat stomach. The silence that followed was deafening. Kyle stared at his plate, mortified. Amanda reached for his hand under the table. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. But something had broken inside me. Years of criticism, of diminishment, of having my achievements belittled and dismissed while secretly keeping their household afloat, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Mom, I said quietly, I need to show you something. I pulled out my phone, hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The spreadsheet I'd maintained for years was accessible with a few taps, detailed records of every payment, every bill, every financial rescue I'd provided. Jessica, we're having a family dinner. Put your phone away, Mom admonished, her tone suggesting I was behaving like a teenager rather than a grown woman. I think you'll want to see this, I replied, my voice calm but firm. It's relevant to our discussion about my hobby business and what I have to show for it. Kyle's eyes widened as he realized what I was about to do. Amanda squeezed his hand, giving me a subtle nod of encouragement. Mom, Dad, I've been meaning to have this conversation for a long time, I began, setting my phone on the table. 3 years ago, Kyle called to tell me that Dad had lost his job and you were facing foreclosure on the house. Dad's face drained of color. Mom's expression shifted from irritation to shock. What are you talking about? She demanded, looking between Dad and me. Your father never lost his job. What ridiculous story is this? Dad stared at his plate, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Diane, he said softly, there are some things I haven't told you. Since that call, I continued, I provided financial support to help keep this house and maintain your lifestyle. All those mysterious windfalls, insurance reimbursements, and lucky breaks? They came from me. Mom's hand flew to her throat. That's absurd. Why would you make up such a thing? I turned my phone toward her, displaying the spreadsheet. This is a record of every payment I've made. The mortgage arrears of $12,000. The new roof at $15,400. Property taxes at $8,600. Dad's heart medication at $7,200. The furnace replacement at $6,800. Your dental work at $4,300. Various home repairs totaling $8,700. I scrolled through the detailed entries, watching the color drain from Mom's face as the evidence mounted. That's $61,000 over 3 years. From my hobby business that doesn't provide a real living. Mom shook her head in disbelief. No. This can't be right. Thomas, tell her this isn't true. Dad looked up, his eyes filled with shame and tears. It's true, Diane. Jessica has been helping us since I lost my position during the restructuring. I couldn't bring myself to tell you. You were so proud of our life, of what we'd built. I couldn't bear to disappoint you. You've been lying to me? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. For 3 years? I've been trying to protect you, Dad replied. When the bank sent the foreclosure notice, I was desperate. Kyle suggested asking Jessica for help, just until I found another position. But the new job paid less than half my old salary. We were already underwater. Kyle spoke up. It's true, Mom. Jess has been transferring money to me, and I've been helping Dad manage the bills. We created stories about where the money was coming from because we knew you wouldn't accept help from Jessica. You never respected her career choice. Mom turned to me, her face unreadable. So this is what? Some grand gesture to prove me wrong? To humiliate me at my own dinner table? No, Mom, I said, feeling surprisingly calm. This is me finally standing up for myself after years of criticism and dismissal. I built a successful business that not only supports me very well but has been supporting this household too. Yet tonight, like every family gathering, you belittled my work and treated me like a disappointment. We never asked for your charity, Mom snapped, defensive anger replacing shock. It wasn't charity, I replied. It was family helping family. The problem isn't that I helped, it's that I felt I had to do it secretly because of your judgment about my career and life choices. So now we're supposed to be grateful that you've been deceiving us? Conspiring with your brother behind my back? No, Mom. You're supposed to recognize that your measure of success might be flawed. That your daughter who makes Facebook posts for a living has built something valuable and meaningful. That maybe, just maybe, I know what I'm doing with my life. Dad reached across the table for Mom's hand, but she pulled away. Diane, this isn't Jessica's fault. The deception was mine. I couldn't admit that I'd failed, that I couldn't provide for our family anymore. You didn't fail, Dad, I said gently. The economy failed. Your company failed you after 30 years of service. There's no shame in needing help. Amanda, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Mrs. Morgan, I've watched Jessica build her business from nothing. She works incredibly hard, often putting her clients' needs above her own. The help she's given your family came at a cost to her: postponed vacations, delayed business expansion, even putting off moving in with Brian to maintain her financial flexibility. Mom sat in stunned silence, her carefully constructed world visibly crumbling around her. The perfect suburban life she'd maintained through sheer force of will had been an illusion, propped up by the daughter whose career choices she'd dismissed for years. I never meant to hurt you, Mom, I said softly. But your criticism has hurt me, deeply and consistently, for years. Every achievement dismissed, every success minimized. Do you know what it feels like to hear your own mother call your passion and livelihood a hobby while you're paying her mortgage? I was trying to protect you, Mom whispered, tears forming. The world is harsh and unstable. I wanted security for you. But at what cost? Your version of security meant ignoring my talents, my interests, my actual successes. And meanwhile, the traditional career path you idolized didn't protect Dad from corporate downsizing, did it? Dad wiped his eyes. Your mother loves you, Jessica. We both do. We wanted to shelter you from the uncertainties we faced. By criticizing every choice I made? By making me feel like a disappointment for following my own path? The emotions I'd suppressed for years finally spilled over. Do you know how many times I've cried in my car after leaving this house? How many therapy sessions I've spent talking about never feeling good enough for my own mother? Kyle reached across the table, squeezing my hand in solidarity. Jess has been carrying this burden alone, Mom. Financially supporting you while enduring your disapproval. It's not right, and it's not fair. Mom looked around the table, suddenly outnumbered. So I'm the villain here? For wanting my daughter to have a stable, respectable career? You're not a villain, I said, but you've been wrong. Wrong about my career, wrong about what constitutes success, and wrong to treat me like I'm somehow failing at life while I've been keeping this household afloat. Mom's face crumpled, decades of carefully maintained composure finally breaking. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to process this. You could start with thank you, Amanda suggested gently. And maybe, I'm proud of you. Dad reached for Mom's hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. Diane, our daughter has saved us from financial ruin while building a successful business. Whatever our expectations were for her life, she's exceeded them in ways we couldn't imagine. The silence that followed was heavy with decades of unspoken feelings, with revelations too big to immediately process. Mom stared at the spreadsheet still displayed on my phone, the evidence of her daughter's success and generosity laid bare in cold, hard numbers. I need a moment, she said finally, rising from the table and walking swiftly toward the back porch. Dad watched her go, then turned to me with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Jessie. For the lies, for not standing up for you, for letting your mother's criticism go unchallenged. You deserved better from both of us. I didn't do it for gratitude, I said, suddenly exhausted. I did it because you're my family and you needed help. But I can't keep pretending that Mom's words don't hurt me. I can't keep funding this illusion that everything's fine while being treated like the family disappointment. Kyle squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing, Jess. This needed to happen. Through the window, I could see Mom sitting alone on the porch swing, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The carefully constructed world she'd maintained through sheer force of will had shattered, and I wasn't sure if our relationship would survive the aftermath. For several minutes, we sat in waited silence. The half-eaten desserts on our plates seemed like artifacts from a different evening, one where we were still playing our assigned family roles instead of confronting long-buried truths. I should go talk to her, Dad finally said, pushing back from the table. No, I replied, surprising myself with my certainty. I will. Kyle shot me a concerned look. Are you sure? This is between Mom and me. It has been for years. I found Mom on the porch swing, staring out at the darkened yard. The security light illuminated the new landscaping I'd paid for, a bitter irony not lost on me. She didn't look up when I sat beside her, though she shifted slightly to make room. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The distant sound of a neighbor's wind chimes filled the silence. Was any of it real? Mom finally asked, her voice small and unfamiliar. Our life these past few years? Parts of it, I answered honestly. Your love for each other. Your pride in Kyle. Your community involvement. But the financial stability? No, that hasn't been real since Dad lost his job. She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. I always thought we were doing well. That we had created this perfect, secure life. Finding out it was all held together by secret payments from my daughter. Her voice broke. The daughter I'd been criticizing for her lack of stability. Why couldn't you ever see value in what I do, Mom? Even before I was helping financially. Why was my path never good enough? Mom finally turned to me, her makeup streaked with tears. Because I was terrified for you. My own mother worked a job she hated for 40 years because it had good benefits. My father's small business failed, and we nearly lost everything. Security meant everything to me because I knew what it was like not to have it. But I built security, Mom. On my own terms, doing work I love. I couldn't see it, she admitted. This digital world you work in, it seems so intangible to me. So impermanent. I wanted something solid for you. Like Dad's solid accounting career that vanished after 30 years of loyalty? The words came out harsher than I intended, but Mom didn't flinch. That's fair, she whispered. When Thomas lost his position, it shattered something in me too. All those years of believing in the system, following the rules. It wasn't supposed to end that way. So you pretended it hadn't ended that way at all. She nodded. I couldn't face what it meant. About our choices, about the future. Thomas tried to tell me we needed to downsize, to adjust our expectations, but I refused to listen. I kept believing things would go back to normal. Through the window, I could see Dad, Kyle, and Amanda clearing the table, giving us space for this long overdue conversation. $61,000, Mom said, shaking her head in disbelief. How could you afford that? Were you putting yourself in debt for us? No. My business is doing well, Mom. Really well. I have 14 employees now, not 12. Our annual revenue last year was just over $2 million. Her eyes widened. $2 million? But you never said. Would you have believed me? Or would you have found a way to diminish it, to suggest it wasn't real success because it didn't fit your definition? Mom had no answer for that, her silence an admission. The back door opened, and Dad stepped onto the porch. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped with the weight of years of deception. I think we all need to talk, he said quietly. Back inside, Kyle and Amanda had made coffee, the mundane task providing a semblance of normalcy amidst the emotional chaos. We gathered in the living room, the formal dining room suddenly feeling too staged for the raw conversation ahead. Dad spoke first, his voice steadier than I'd heard it all evening. I need to take responsibility for my part in this. When I lost my job, I was ashamed. After 30 years at the firm, being let go felt like a personal failure. I couldn't bear to disappoint you, Diane, so I created this elaborate fiction. We're supposed to be partners, Mom replied, hurt evident in her voice. You shouldn't have had to hide something like that from me. Would you have reacted with understanding? Dad asked gently. Or would you have seen it as a failure, as our carefully built life crumbling? Mom didn't answer directly. And you too, she turned to Kyle and me, conspiring behind my back all this time. We were trying to help Dad, Kyle explained. He was carrying so much stress, his blood pressure was dangerously high. The doctor said he was at risk for a heart attack. When Jess offered financial help, it seemed like the only solution. The deception wasn't about hurting you, Mom, I added. It was about protecting the image of success and stability that meant so much to you. Amanda, who had been largely silent, spoke up. Mrs. Morgan, I grew up in a family where appearances meant nothing and love meant everything. My parents were open about financial struggles, about mistakes, about needing help sometimes. That honesty created trust. What I've observed in this family is the opposite: appearances valued above honesty, image above authentic connection. Mom looked startled at this assessment from her daughter-in-law, but didn't immediately reject it. I don't know how to be any other way, she admitted after a moment. My entire life has been built around creating and maintaining a certain image. Maybe it's time to try something new, Dad suggested, taking her hand. We're in our 60s, Diane. Do we really want to spend our remaining years pretending to be something we're not? What would that even look like? Mom asked, genuinely bewildered. I don't know who I am outside of the life we've created. You're still you, I said softly. Still the woman who organized neighborhood fundraisers for families in need. Still the retired teacher who mentored struggling students. Those things aren't about appearances, they're about your genuine desire to help others. Mom looked at me with new eyes, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time in years. When did you become so wise? Probably around the same time I became successful enough to support my parents without them noticing, I replied with a small smile. A fragile laugh escaped Mom, surprising us all. I suppose I deserved that. Kyle leaned forward. What happens now? With the house, with everything? Dad looked at Mom, then at me. We can't continue accepting Jessica's financial support. It's not right, especially given how we've treated her. We should sell the house, Mom said suddenly, shocking everyone. It's too big for us anyway, and the maintenance is becoming too much. We could find something smaller, more manageable. Are you serious? Dad asked, clearly stunned by this suggestion from the woman who had refused to consider downsizing for years. I'm tired, Thomas. Tired of keeping up appearances. Tired of pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Mom turned to me. And I'm tired of not really knowing my daughter because I was too busy criticizing her choices to see her success. I felt tears forming, unexpected emotion welling up at this first acknowledgement from my mother that perhaps she'd been wrong. I'd like to help you find a new place, I offered. Not by paying for it, but by helping you through the process. I know a great real estate agent who specializes in downsizing for retirees. Mom nodded, a tentative smile forming. I'd like that. And I think, Dad added hesitantly, that we should consider family therapy. There are years of communication patterns and expectations to unravel. We could use professional help. To my surprise, Mom didn't immediately reject this suggestion. Maybe you're right. Clearly, we haven't been handling things well on our own. As the conversation continued, practical details mixing with emotional revelations, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The secret I'd carried for 3 years was finally in the open, and while the aftermath was messy and uncertain, it was real in a way our family interactions hadn't been for a long time. When Kyle and Amanda prepared to leave around 11, Amanda hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered. That took incredible courage. Kyle embraced me next. I should have supported you more openly all along. I'm sorry for my part in this. You were caught in the middle, I assured him. But no more family secrets, okay? Agreed, he said firmly. I found myself alone with Mom and Dad in the entryway, an awkward silence falling as we struggled with the new reality of our relationship. I should go too, I said finally. It's getting late, and I have an early client meeting tomorrow. Jessica, Mom said, stopping me as I reached for the door. I need to say something. I turned, bracing myself for whatever might come next. Your business, your career. I was wrong about it. The words seemed physically difficult for her to speak. What you've built is remarkable. And the fact that you've been successful enough to help us while we continued to criticize you. She shook her head. I'm deeply ashamed of how I've treated you. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my mother, this admission was monumental. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot to me." Dad hugged me goodbye, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Jessie. Always have been." As I drove home, tears flowed freely. 3 years of secret support, of swallowing criticism while paying bills, of building success in the shadow of parental disapproval, it had finally ended in a single evening of painful but necessary truth. Brian was waiting up, his concerned face breaking into relief when I walked through the door. I collapsed into his arms, emotionally drained but lighter than I had felt in years. "They know," I whispered against his shoulder. "Everything's out in the open now." "And," he prompted gently. "And it was terrible and wonderful and terrifying and freeing all at once," I answered, managing a small laugh through my tears. I think we might actually be okay. Eventually." A week passed before I heard from either of my parents. I'd half expected Mom to retreat into denial, to pretend our confrontation had never happened. When my phone rang and Dad's name appeared on the screen, I braced myself for damage control. "Jessie?" His voice sounded tentative, unfamiliar. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "Of course, Dad. Is everything okay?" "Yes, well, we're adjusting. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of talking too, more than we have in years, if I'm honest." I could hear the awkward pauses, the careful selection of words. This was new territory for all of us. "We've made some decisions," he continued. "We've contacted a realtor about listing the house. And we had our first appointment with a family therapist yesterday." "You did?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "How did it go?" "It was challenging. Your mother struggled with being so vulnerable with a stranger. But she went, and she's agreed to continue." His voice softened. "She's trying, Jessie. This isn't easy for her." "I know, Dad. It's not easy for any of us. We've also been working on a repayment plan. We can't pay back everything at once, but we want to start making monthly payments to you for what you've given us." I closed my eyes, emotion welling up unexpectedly. "Dad, that's not necessary. I didn't help you expecting repayment. It's necessary for us," he insisted gently. "For our dignity, and to acknowledge what you did for us. We may not be able to repay all of it, but we need to try." After we hung up, I sat in my office, watching my team work through the glass walls of my conference room. 12 talented professionals collaborating on campaigns for clients who valued our expertise. The hobby business my mother had dismissed had created not just my livelihood, but theirs as well. 3 days later, a text from Mom appeared on my phone. "Would you be available for coffee on Saturday?" Just us. We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes. Mom arrived first, a strange reversal of our usual dynamic where she criticized my punctuality. She looked different somehow, less rigid, though still perfectly put together. She'd aged years in a single week, the carefully maintained facade crumbling to reveal the vulnerable woman beneath. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "Why wouldn't I?" She smiled sadly. "After a lifetime of criticizing you, I wouldn't blame you for wanting distance." The raw honesty caught me off guard. This wasn't the mother I knew, the woman who maintained appearances at all costs. "I'm seeing you differently now," she continued when I didn't immediately respond. "The therapist asked me to consider why I've been so critical of your choices. It's been uncomfortable to examine my motivations." "What have you discovered?" I asked carefully. "That much of it wasn't about you at all." Mom stared into her coffee cup. "It was about my own insecurities, my own narrow definition of success. I projected my fears onto you, and in doing so, I missed seeing the remarkable woman you've become." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I've wanted to hear something like that from you for so long." "I know. And I'm sorry it took such drastic circumstances for me to see it." She reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. I'm proud of you, Jessica. Not just for your business success, but for your integrity, your generosity, your strength of character. You're a far better person than I raised you to be." The tears flowed freely now, years of seeking maternal approval suddenly fulfilled in this quiet cafe corner. "The house goes on the market next week," Mom continued. "We found a nice townhouse in a retirement community that's much more manageable." Your father seems relieved, actually. All those years of maintaining that big property were wearing on him. "How are you feeling about it?" "Scared," she admitted with surprising candor. "My identity has been wrapped up in that house, in our position in the community. But also, a little excited. There's something freeing about letting go of appearances." Over the next 3 months, our family entered a period of cautious rebuilding. The weekly therapy sessions continued, sometimes productive, sometimes painful. Dad blossomed in retirement once freed from the pretense of financial stability, taking up woodworking in their new townhouse's community workshop. Mom struggled more with the transition but found unexpected satisfaction in simplifying their lives. Kyle and Amanda's pregnancy progressed, the impending arrival of the first grandchild providing a positive focus for family conversations. Mom channeled her energy into preparing for her grandmother role, researching modern parenting approaches with the same thoroughness she'd once applied to maintaining appearances. Brian and I finally moved in together, my financial obligations to my parents no longer standing in the way of our future plans. The business continued to thrive, expanding to 16 employees and a larger office space. The most profound change, however, was in my relationship with Mom. The criticism didn't disappear overnight, decades of communication patterns couldn't be rewired in months, but when it emerged, I now felt empowered to address it directly. "Mom, that sounded like the old pattern we're trying to change," I'd say calmly when she made a dismissive comment about my casual weekend attire or questioned a business decision. To my surprise, she usually caught herself. "You're right. I'm sorry. Old habits." 6 months after the confrontation, we gathered at Kyle and Amanda's home for a Sunday dinner to celebrate the birth of their son, Thomas Kyle Morgan, named for both grandfathers. As I watched Mom gently rocking her grandson, her face soft with love, I marveled at how much had changed. Dad sat beside me on the couch, watching them with a contented smile. "She's different with him," he observed quietly. "More gentle, less focused on appearances." "Grandchildren get the best version of their grandparents," I replied. "You helped create this version of us, Jessie," Dad said, turning to face me. "Your courage that night forced us to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. It wasn't just financial support you gave us, it was the chance to become better people, if we were brave enough to take it." Later, as Brian and I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The pain of that dinner confrontation had been excruciating but necessary, like lancing an infected wound to allow healing to begin. Our family would never be perfect, but we were learning to be authentic with each other, and that was worth more than any facade of perfection. "You're quiet," Brian observed, reaching for my hand across the console. "Just thinking about how much has changed. How different things might have been if I'd kept the secret, kept paying their bills while accepting their criticism." "You chose the harder path," he said, squeezing my hand. "The one with temporary pain but the possibility of real connection. That takes courage." I thought about the young woman who had sat in her car 6 months ago, rehearsing responses to criticism that never came. How desperately she had wanted maternal approval, how she had funded her parents' lifestyle while accepting diminishment of her achievements. That woman seemed like a stranger now. The healing wasn't complete, perhaps it never would be entirely. Mom still occasionally slipped into old patterns. Dad sometimes enabled her critical nature through silence. I still found myself seeking approval in ways I knew were unhealthy. But we were talking about these patterns now, recognizing them when they emerged, working together to create healthier dynamics. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is speak your truth, even when it hurts. Real relationships can't be built on illusions, and real love requires honesty. That dinner confrontation had cost me $61,000 in financial support I would never recover, but what I gained was infinitely more valuable: a chance at an authentic relationship with my parents, built on truth rather than appearances. The cost was high, but the return was priceless. I'd love to hear if any of you have experienced similar family dynamics or had to confront difficult truths with loved ones. How did you handle it? What were the outcomes? Please share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family, growth, and finding your voice. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May we all find the courage to speak our truths and build authentic connections with those we love.